All right, we're back. Welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. And we've got some news from Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump, along with War Secretary Pete Hegseth, just made an announcement about the future of shipbuilding in the United States.
It's my great honor to announce that I have approved a plan for the Navy to begin the construction of two brand new, very large, the largest we've ever built, battleships.
The new class of warship will be named after President Trump. Also in San Francisco, power has been restored to most customers after an outage left 130,000 homes and businesses dark over the weekend after another fire, broke out at a PG&E station. Now the outage leaves driverless cars and battery-powered cars stalled throughout the city. And the Department of Homeland Security is tripling its cash incentive for illegals to self-deport by year's end, offering a $3,000 stipend up from $1,000. Nearly 2 million illegals have already self-deported this year. Keep coming. But first, Republicans are the big tent party, even if you say some stuff that not everybody in the party likes. So let's do this. All right, America Fest this weekend in Arizona highlighted what I have been talking about for a while now, the divergence in the Republican Party and how we kind of need to get back to focusing on winning and our core policies that we actually ran on and actually do what we said we were going to do rather than be concerned about things that shouldn't matter, like little squabbles on individual issues we might have with each other.
President Trump did not build the greatest coalition in politics by running his supporters through endless, self-defeating purity tests. He says, "Make America great again," because every American is invited. We don't care if you're white or black, rich or poor, young or old, rural or urban, controversial or a little bit boring, or somewhere in between. People of every faith come to our banner because they know that the America First movement will make their lives better, and they also know that the Democrats don't care about anything other than maybe transing their kids.
But the liberal media jumped on, Vance tells supporters to avoid endless self-defeating purity tests amid cracks in MAGA coalition. This article was hilarious. First, nobody else read it, and I don't blame you because nobody listens to CNN anymore. We haven't cared for a long time what they say, but they have just yelled racist, racist, racist on everything, so we just tuned them out. See, the left knows that Vance is, with all likelihood and hopefully, going to be the next president of the United States, and that means 11 more years from now of what you are seeing, okay? Which I'm here for, but hopefully not with as many redactions as the Epstein files we got on Friday, but you get what I'm saying. So those cracks in the MAGA coalition that they're talking about, they're only being fomented by the left and only considered by very weak Republicans to try to reclaim the old guard and the Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney style so Democrats can win the next election. Because their side, the Democrat side, they're running a socialist bartender by all likelihoods and a wannabe TikTok star who pretends that she didn't go to an affluent private school after a congressional seat in Texas was eliminated. And the same networks rushed to say that J.D. Vance would welcome in racists and things like that. Way to miss the forest for the trees, Libs, but I guess it's just par for the course. What J.D. Vance was actually articulating was that we're not going to be doing these perfectly perfect tests anymore. If you agree with most of our principles, one of which is free speech, then this is the party that you should vote for. And fringe right-wing influencers in their case and the millions that listen to them, look, we want your vote too. Do I think that some of their ideas are a little nuts? Do I agree with them? No, I don't agree with them. But just because they say some racist or stupid or incorrect stuff doesn't mean I don't want them to vote for the people that will better represent my values in this party. We're not voting for those racist podcasters. We're voting for the actual representatives, and we need the votes from everybody. Because we need votes to ensure the principles of a freer, less regulated America First baseline. And no Republican, especially on stage at America Fest, should be in the business of telling anyone not to vote for a candidate that embraces freedom simply because they said something racist once. Democrats canvass like criminals and drug dealers and illegals and communists. I'll take Candace Owens' vote any day against that. I wouldn't vote for her, but I'd take her vote for a Republican candidate over a Democrat 8 days a week. Our side needs to get all the votes we can. Look, we shouldn't have a problem with this. But I don't know, if we do, I guess those people enjoy being in the minority party, because that's just the reality. Because the alternative is liberals taxing us to death, trying, and I say trying, to take our guns, because they're not taking mine. 50 million illegals probably in the next round, just popping in, mooching off our system. Drag queens will be twerking all over schools and all of our kids' faces. They'll be chopping and sewing things on and all these weird pills. But it doesn't sound like Ben Shapiro understands this. Somehow he made America Fest a squabble of not denouncing critics of Israel, because he criticized Megyn Kelly for not denouncing Candace Owens, basically declaring himself like the moral arbiter of what should be acceptable in the Republican Party.
The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. That is a non-starter. Meghan Markle is a young mother. Ilhan Omar is a young mother. That doesn't matter.
Ilhan Omar doesn't embrace any of my views. I'm sorry, what, Ben? Hey, look, do I think Ben is incredibly well-read and a good debater? Yeah, I do, but far from the messenger of my party right now, especially after that speech. You see, the Republican Party was forged in conflict. It was, the Civil War, because Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president when they broke from the Whig Party. So, Ben Shapiro lacks a key tenet that I look for in a leader or messenger of my party, and that's being tough enough to be able to back up those words. But I think Megyn gave a masterclass in her response.
I found it kind of funny that Ben thinks he has the power to decide who gets excommunicated from the conservative movement, which shows a willful blindness about his position in it. I resent that he thinks he's in a position to decide who must say what to whom and when. I don't think we are friends anymore. I've been a very good friend to Ben. Nobody knew who the heck Ben Shapiro was when I started putting him on my shows.
As I said, I don't really particularly care for Candace on a lot of things, but I do want her and her followers to vote for my party. And this might ruffle a few feathers in Ben's cap on why. Because I care, and Republicans should care, more about Republican principles governing my country than I care, or any of us should care, about Israel 5,000 miles away, or Ukraine, or whatever a stand. And speaking at America Fest, you would think you would understand that. But still welcome Ben's vote with open arms for my party, and I would debate him any day on that. J.D. Vance, I think, put it to bed, too.
So if you love America, if you want all of us to be richer, stronger, safer, and prouder, you have a home on this team. I didn't bring a list of conservatives to denounce or to deplatform, and I don't really care if some people out there, I'm sure we'll have the fake news media, denounce me after this speech.
But while Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney gasp, and a bunch of other rhinos that, are also probably having a real problem with that because they want perfect people, I want their vote too. All those rhinos, come vote. Vote for Republicans. They need to understand that's how you win, because now the Republican Party is the big tent party. It has to be. I mean, Democrats used to be, but now Republicans, and there's far more diversity of thought on our side in the Republican Party, and that's how we won. We shouldn't have all these crazy denouncements for people that we disagree with one thing. We should have the diversity of ideas. We don't have to agree with everybody to vote for the same candidate, but we should always welcome the notion of a debate based on common principle of freedom. Look, the old guard is dead. There's not enough people to make them ever win an election ever again in my lifetime. That's why Mitt Romney got shellacked. Okay, the party has changed. Hell, look, I've changed. I used to be as rigid as possible, and I have moved more libertarian in the last 10, 15 years. I think the whole Republican Party has probably moved libertarian. Look, I'll give you an example, okay? I used to be super pro-life, anti-abortion. I mean, look, do I like the idea of abortion? No, of course not. I'm personally very against abortion. But the thing I've moved on is I don't think some 80-year-old man who should have been term limited 40 years ago in Washington, D.C. should be telling a would-be or potentially would-be single mother that he doesn't even know, who maybe got pregnant by accident, that they can't have that option. And I may change that again in 10 years. Who knows? I'd probably still vote Republican, though. But here's the other side of my opinion on that. I also ardently believe that your church should absolutely be able to stand outside that abortion clinic and pray or whatever, offer an adoption service, help, aid, anything for that mother. Because that is the diversity of thought that Trump accepted, and it put him in office twice. Maybe more. But if Ben Shapiro was in charge of the party, he would tell people like me and millions of others, because he's so rigid on this, not to vote for Republicans because it was unacceptable in his eyes. See, the purity test J.D. Vance just wants to throw out the window, and the reason they should be tossed is because it ignores all the bad stuff Democrats are doing and have done and will continue to do. That they forced you to get a shot that we now know kills people. That Biden didn't vet Afghan migrants. One came in and shot 2 National Guardsmen, killed one. That Somali immigrants stole $18 billion and sent it to terror groups Al-Shabaab. That Georgia counted 315,000 uncertified ballots in a state that Trump lost by 11,000 and then was indicted for asking about it. That 20 years of Bill Clinton skated like while he was flying around the world with Epstein on his island, or that FEMA ignored Trump supporters whose homes got washed down a river in a hurricane while they stole $59 million other dollars that probably should have gone to them to house illegal immigrants while veterans slept on the streets. You've got Russiagate and raiding Mar-a-Lago and the Hunter Biden laptop. Of course CNN wants to ignore all that and focus on the fact that J.D. Vance didn't denounce a podcaster who said something mean. Now you see what's important? Because if we don't get votes from people who sometimes say things we disagree with or are mean, then sometimes, we're going to lose elections. Sometimes things that turn out to be right, by the way, that they say that are mean and offensive, the Democrats get elected and they do real things that get people killed, that destroy their businesses and chop off children's body parts that you can't put back on. Look, if you live in a world perfect enough to say, well, I'll never vote for somebody who doesn't condemn something for... I'd say, first, get your head out of your rear. But also, I kind of envy you that you live in such a perfect, star-spangled, awesome world that words are more important than all the things that Democrats actually do that I just mentioned. One thing, though, I will not tolerate, and what our message as Republicans should be, and what we need to get focused on, and I've been saying it forever, once these people do get elected with our big tent platform, they better govern on those same principles, and they better do what they said they were going to do. Former Trump campaign advisor Roger Stone, sir, how are you?
Carl, I agree with everything you just said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thought J.D. Vance really set the proper tone. I must tell you that Turning Point USA's America Fest gathering in Phoenix was extraordinary. It gives great hope to see 30,000 God-loving, Constitution-loving, freedom-loving, America-loving young people just starting their lifetime of activism. It gives you great encouragement. And unfortunately, conservatives have this tendency to form the firing squad in a circle. I don't think we can afford to do this. We're up against a very determined, extraordinary, corrupt, Marxist left that has taken over the once great Democrat Party. They want to destroy our constitutional freedom. They want to accuse us. This is laughable. Trump is weaponizing the criminal justice system against us. This Kafkaesque. I mean, ask General Flynn or Donald Trump about.
How about you? They kicked in your door.
Exactly true. And now we have shocking news from Fulton County, Georgia, which indicates that perhaps the election results as reported were not accurate after all, something that many of us long suspected and a number of election integrity experts have claimed. So we have bigger fights right now. Instead of shooting at each other, I think we need to be wise to recognize that Hakeem Jeffries and AOC and Chuck Schumer and the Pelosi money machine have every intention of trying to take control of the House. So that the last 2 years of Donald Trump's most promising presidency is an endless maze of impeachments and phony, baseless investigations, while those who actually did break the law and violate the Constitution escape any accountability or justice for it.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned justice there, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the poll from there about cabinet secretaries. Pete Hegseth was far and beyond the frontrunner and favored cabinet member of this administration. Marco Rubio was close. Tulsi Gabbard was very close. RFK was very close. At the bottom, at 12%, was Pam Bondi.
Look, I know Pam Bondi. I like Pam Bondi. This is an open question. I've made the case that since there was a seditious conspiracy that began in the Oval Office in 2016, continued through the Russian collusion hoax, continued through 2 phony impeachments, continued through the fraudulent 2020 election, manifested itself on January 6th in the Fed surrection, then springs up again in the phony documents case and the outrageous raid on a former president's home. That is one continuing seditious conspiracy. Has no statute of limitations, therefore. Same exact people directing that at every turn in that tortured extra-constitutional road, and therefore the proper jurisdiction is South Florida. Whether the U.S. attorney from South Florida, who Fox reported had released a number of subpoenas, issued a number of subpoenas to Andrew McCabe, John Brennan, and others in the cabal. That was promising news, but we've heard nothing since then. So at this point, I think the jury is out. The president's been very clear about accountability and justice. It is not about revenge and retaliation. That's the rhetoric of the left. But it remains to be seen whether our Justice Department will step up and do what needs to be done.
Well, I know if you were Attorney General, we'd have some people in bracelets by now, sir. Roger Stone, pleasure.
Great to be with you, Carl. God bless you.
All right, you as well. Coming up, in a huge win for free speech, the Ninth Circuit Court has ruled the University of Washington trampled on one professor's First Amendment rights. He's going to join us live later in the show, but first, Americans and lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are furious over the thousands and thousands of redacted Epstein files. Why are they hiding these things? Release them all. That was the law. Newsmax legal analyst Jay Town joins me in a second.
Will you be able to afford your golden years? Do you worry how you'll make ends meet? You may be leaving up to $100,000 unclaimed. You need this special report. How to boost your Social Security and retirement by at least $100,000 or more. Get your free copy today. You've earned the benefits. Take advantage now. See our special offer to claim your free report. Call or go online today.
Are you or a loved one a military veteran that has been diagnosed with mesothelioma? Do you have questions about getting the best treatment or paying medical bills? Have you received the proper care and compensation you deserve? Let our firm serve you with the same dedication you served your country. We are exclusively devoted to helping those with mesothelioma. Call now to get this free book, and we'll answer any question you have. We'll even visit you.
Call 800-555-8958 or go to mesobook.com.
How would you live your life differently if you knew it was only a matter of time before you went completely deaf and blind? I have Usher syndrome, a rare condition that's causing me to lose all of my vision and hearing at the same time. I'm a fighter, trying to hold on to what I still have. But I can't do it alone.
There are only a few men I'd trust with my life. 2 of them built this wallet. I've known the guys behind Proof for nearly 20 years, and we've been through hell and back together. When they told me they were building the wallet, I just said, bill me now, I'm in. This isn't some fashion piece. This isn't just some trend. These wallets are a direct reflection of the kind of men who built it. It's built to last, built to function, and designed to carry everything you need and more. If anything happens to it, they'll take care of it. No questions, no fine print. If you knew the guys who created this wallet, you wouldn't carry anything else. Go check them out, because they built this thing right.
It's really the Attorney General's office, Pam Bondi, who is responsible. And there are several ways to get at this. Some take longer, some are shorter. The quickest way, and I think most expeditious way to get justice for these victims, is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi.
justice may be served, and if it means holding our AG in contempt, maybe so be it. But then again, Eric Holder was held in contempt for running guns to the Mexican drug cartel, and nothing happened here. So Pam Bondi did say back in February 19th, that the files were on her desk. So what's the holdup? This past Friday was the hard deadline set by Congress to release the Epstein files. This is a law that was signed by the president himself, her boss, to release all unclassified records related to Epstein investigations. Friday was not a suggestion. It was a deadline. Look, if I filed my taxes like the DOJ followed this law, I'd be in jail. But let's cut through the hype. The DOJ did release tens of thousands of pages, including records of celebrities and several photos, including many of Bill Clinton. But the release was just tons. It was like 600 pages that were totally redacted. Hundreds of images had faces blurred out, even if the person wasn't confirmed as a victim or underage. Look, Epstein's contact book, heavily redacted with a masseuse list and all, over 250 names in there, all redacted. We don't even know who, how about just give us who they gave massages to? Americans deserve answers on this, just like we were promised. Pam Bondi and Deputy AG Todd Blanche giving a list to reasons why, citing protecting victim privacy, which I get. Ongoing investigations, there shouldn't be. I know they just opened one up. I don't know if they opened it for this, but privilege or confidential information, okay, maybe. You have to follow the law. Look, this is going to come out, okay? And whether or not someone wants to go to jail in the process is going to be up to them. Newsmax legal analyst Jay Town, sir, look, it's a law. Why won't they do it?
So I'll say this. I agree with what you're saying and the absolute sentiment of the intro to this segment, that it is the law and it needs to be done. I would love, and I think you would too, to be done talking about the release part of the Epstein files. What's in them is I'm sure, great fodder for months, if not years to come. And it was a promise that was made, and now it is the law. But what I will say is this.
Yeah.
The 30 days that the Department of Justice had to release what's redact, withhold, and release over 1 million files is really a staggering task. And so I understand why it shouldn't have been expected that we would have seen all 1 million. But here's what I'll say to my friends at the Department of Justice, and they are my friends. I'll say that get ahead of it. If you're not, you knew the week before the 19th of December that you were not going to release the entire tranche. So get ahead of it. Let people know why.
Jay, and I respect you, Jay, and I love you, brother. But going to get Osama bin Laden was a monumental task. Going to kill, to get Abed Asham, the guy I went and got, that's a monumental task. Redacting some names of files that they've had for, 20 years. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, it's I don't care about Epstein. The dude is dead, probably. But I care about the rich and powerful people who are, at this rate, going to get away with this stuff.
That's the part I want to talk about. That's the absolute. So release the file. I want to be done talking about releasing the files. I want to talk about who's in them and what they did. Right. And so I'm with you 100% on that.
Do we need a special counsel or what?
I'm sorry?
Do we need a special counsel, or how do we get somebody in bracelets?
I think that what we need to do at this moment is spend the next 30 days getting the rest of them released and put up on the website in a searchable format. It's hard for me to believe that this DOJ, if they couldn't bring charges against somebody, that they wouldn't have already.
Couldn't and wouldn't, though, are different here.
True. That's very true. And whether or not the proofs are there. Remember, these victims, when they were 15, 20 years ago, they're 35 now with families. Some of these victims, if not all of them, do not want to be a part of this fiasco any longer. And so that makes your proofs very difficult. You're not just going to put an unwilling victim on the stand who's now a mother of 3, and nobody knows that she was at Epstein Island. And so these are tough cases to get cooperation from victims, and that might be what is inhibiting any prosecution beyond Maxwell and Epstein. But I'm with you, Carl. I want to see him released just because I don't want to have this conversation. I want to talk about the substance of whatever is released. I think that is an important conversation for us to have.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and make the prediction that if Republicans don't, or anybody, doesn't have to be Republicans, if someone doesn't go to jail over something they did with an underage girl, which there are hundreds of them that we know have been trafficked, and it wasn't, Jeffrey Epstein didn't track them to himself. If they don't do that, they will lose the midterms unequivocally. Am I wrong?
I hope so, because I don't want to lose unequivocally. But someone needs to go to jail for those crimes if it's possible to prosecute them. I'm 100%. And if they need a special counsel, then let's go.
And I'd love it to be you. J-Town, my pleasure.
I almost. Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up. A mayor in an American city goes to court. No big deal, right? But wait until you see the special treatment he gets. All that and more in our Culture Club.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
Your parents have given you some amazing gifts. Celebrate the ones you inherited with Ancestry DNA. Explore the detailed family roots, cultures, and traits that shaped who you are today for only $29.
From the beginning, America has depended on the courage and resilience of those who serve in our armed forces. For 250 years, they've been there for us without fail, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom, helping us become the nation we are today. At Wounded Warrior Project, our mission honors the past by building a better future for post-9/11 veterans, service members, and their families. Our life-changing programs and services help warriors improve their mental and physical health, access the VA benefits they've earned, and connect with their communities, their purpose, and each other. Warriors have given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength, resilience, and recovery. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
Welcome to Allegiance Flag Supply, where all of our flags are made right here in America, supporting a 100% American supply chain. Here at the inspection station, my friend Kiara ensures quality in every stitch. And each flag set includes non-tangled spinners, so your flag flies free. Visit showallegiance.com for your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Hurry in for huge savings going on now at Motorhome Specialist, now with 2 locations. Shop and save on over 1,000 motorhomes, starting at $69,995, only at Motorhome Specialist, the #1 motorhome dealer in the world.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Phytonutrients are naturally occurring plant nutrients. Balance of Nature is an easy way to give your body more of a variety of phytonutrients that might be missing from your everyday diet.
Go to balanceofnature.com and get the whole health system at our best price for life.
Former Meet the Press host Chuck Todd thinks he knows why there is distrust in media, and it's not media bias.
One of the reasons I think trust in media has fallen to so low is remember what the media is. It's a reflection of, I always say I'm as good as the sources I have, not necessarily the sources I want at times. The left doesn't trust the media now, and the right doesn't trust the media. I put the blame on big tech and algorithms that sort of, I think, make it too easy for too many people to live in a bubble, a filter bubble.
You put the blame on all that? Okay, I mean, you need good, credible sources and not get caught lying every day, maybe. That's what makes people trust you. You think that AI is to blame for that? Okay. I mean, because the liberal media just loves to paint the right to look bad and alter anything they say. Like the BBC completely changed the entire meeting. They clipped two parts that were an hour apart on Trump's January 6th speech and stuck them together. Yeah, that had nothing to do with it, right, Chuck? TPUSA contributor Morgonn McMichael and political commentator and TPUSA speaker Ian Haworth. Morgan, I mean, nobody's buying that. He said that on this network.
I think it's a little ridiculous, especially when we have seen censorship going after conservatives from these liberal media outlets for honestly now over a decade. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. So the notion that it's AI and algorithms only being to blame and not the people behind the networks, I do think is just a little silly. I think as we continue to go forward, the trust in the media has continued to decline. And yes, I have seen some liberals decline trust in the media, but really it still is the conservatives mostly.
Yeah, exactly. And if your algorithm sucks, change your, like maybe unfollow the Huffington Post and refollow Newsmax. I don't know. But you know, here's another one. And this is, Ian, to me is crazy. The leftists, it's who controls these newsrooms. The case in point, CBS, now run by Barry Weiss, who all the moderates were like, oh, she could do a really good job, spiked a story on the notorious El Salvador prison last night saying that more work needs to be done. I mean, like, cue the outrage, right? The reporter behind the story, Sharon Ofsenson, put her own employer on blast in an email saying, like, when it fails to air without credible explanation, the public will correctly identify this as corporate censorship. It is corporate censorship. I mean, come on, do better, Barry.
It's just, I find all of this just so ridiculous because it's like the obvious outrage you're going to get every single time from these people who see the media as there to serve their own agenda. I do enjoy it when people get outraged when someone like Barry Weiss comes in who isn't even a conservative, but because gasp, she's tried to make some changes that they don't like. But they'll still collect the paycheck. I do love all of this outrage by people who will keep taking a paycheck. Right. You could just quit. You could just go home. You could do something maybe that would be useful. But instead, they like to complain, just like they complained for the last couple of years, like children. It's just exhausting and ridiculous.
You say go home. Most of them work from home anyway because they refuse to go back to the office. This is another ridiculous one. The mayor of an American city, Lawrence, Massachusetts, apparently needed a translator in court because his English ain't so good. Rule this.
Use of your services as a translator here. The division has a concern and has raised an objection based on the fact that counsel, much like me in my capacity as a hearing officer, don't speak Spanish. Questions are being translated both directions from the attorney and from the witness accurately.
How do I never press, 2 for English ever again? Morgan?
I just want to, he immigrated to the United States in New York in 1980s and has then lived in Lawrence in 1989. So there's really no reason for this man to not be fluent in English. I think that is a basic standard if you are running for an elected office. The fact that this is not mandated that you must be fluent in English and be able to effectively communicate, not just to in a courtroom, but also just to the constituents, to people in America, is honestly a little bit blasphemous.
Well, it's sad that our founding fathers never thought we'd be ridiculous enough to elect somebody who didn't speak the language of the country. But
maybe that should be illegal.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe also like people are just stupid and their vote is worth as much as mine, which sucks. And this is what happens though when you push, save the environment garbage. White liberals just outsource their pollution to other countries because places like Nigeria, who, by the way, we would ship our old batteries to, they would chop them to bits and just dump the battery acid. Well, now, people are dying because of, tons of poisonous stuff in the soil, and then they're just shipping it back, and white liberals are like, look, we recycled.
It's all performative, isn't it? It's exactly like just buying something from somewhere that was made by slave labor because it's not made by slave labor here. That's not my problem. Every single one of these stories, it's always the same kind of thing of it's just the hypocrisy and the shamelessness and the fact that if it's not happening in front of your eyes, it's not real. This is, I think there's no greater example of environmentalism, just the fact that they can outsource this as if we don't all breathe the same air in the world, which is also what they tell us every single day.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Saudi Arabia is burning 100 acres of tires, and enjoy your Nikes. Morgan, exactly. Ian, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's all crazy. Coming up, Tulsi Gabbard warning about the biggest threat to the U.S., and it's one that I've been telling you about for ages. That story next.
Israel, the birthplace of our faiths for Christians and Jews. That Christmas morning, wise men brought gifts from outside the Holy Land.
But in this year of war, this Holy Land and her people are living in fear, and many of the elderly are alone and suffering.
Like the wise men or wise women, would you open your heart and give a special holiday food box to someone here in Israel this Christmas, Hanukkah season?
Right now, the hardships in Israel are felt by everyone. People like Hannah, who can't buy food. That is where the fellowship comes in. That's where the fellowship is called. Baruch Hashem. To feed the hungry.
Happy Hanukkah.
Through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, your special holiday gift of just $25 can answer their prayers this Hanukkah and Christmas season.
It's people like Chaya that you can touch.
Please call, scan, or go online now to help rush emergency food and healing to elderly Jews and their Christian neighbors struggling to rebuild their lives from the war.
You are a Christian. Those words of Isaiah, that the Spirit of the Lord is upon you. There we go. You're bringing hope. You're bringing tomorrow on the table to her and to so many others. What will happen, amen, when tens of millions of Christians and millions of Jews together, we make this holy day season holy indeed?
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Oh, boy, exactly what I didn't want to spend my money on. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, along with Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, they're leading a $112 billion charge to rebuild Gaza as like this futuristic city called Project Sunrise. Look, okay. 32-page PowerPoint proposal reportedly shows war-torn Gaza replaced with like luxury high-rises, resorts, and reimagined as this bustling luxury metropolis, which it never will be because you still have the same people there. The $112 billion cost spread it over 10 years. Now, the U.S., and this is what I'm annoyed about, would commit to anchor the program with $60 billion. That's like half the funding. Why would we do this? We didn't obliterate the Strip. It wasn't our bomb. Well, we probably paid for part of the bombs, but we didn't actually drop them. They want to spend their own money? Fine with me. I'm done with this nation building. It never works out. Michael Savage, host of Savage Nation. Sir, seems dumb.
Well, it's not dumb when you follow the money. Let's be clear here. There's a lot of money at stake, but $60 billion from the American taxpayer again. So let's see. First, you destroy Gaza with American bombs. Then you rebuild Gaza with American taxpayer dollars. It's no good. Nope. It looks bad. It feeds the anti-Semitism tied to the anti-Zionism, tied to the anti-Netanyahuism. This is a bad, bad thing. I don't like it. It stinks to high heaven. It's self-dealing, self-serving, and very ugly. And I'm getting tired of it, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, and people are getting tired of working from January to May for free to pay the government so they can...
I mean, it's not right. This is all wrong. But, you know, this plan originally called for displacing 1.2 million Palestinians out of Gaza. And I went on many Newsmax shows and said, wait a minute, this is crazy. You can't move people with donkeys and not expect the world to go berserk. Yeah. You can't do this to 1.2 million people, whether you like them or not. This is wrong. Now, so they dropped the displacement of the Palestinians out of Gaza, out of this new formula, and now they just want to build Las Vegas on the Mediterranean.
Here's the problem. You drop getting rid of the Palestinians. Like, look, third world countries are third world countries because they have third world people in them. If you leave the people there, you're still going to have donkeys taking a dump on the highway in broad daylight.
Something tells me you've been there and done that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean done that with donkeys. I'm saying driven over the areas that people with donkeys had just driven. No, it's not a laughing matter. First, you destroy the entire Gaza Strip, and now you're going to rebuild it in the name of what? You got to kill for peace? This is insanity, and I don't like it. It's going crazy. Yeah. Look, there's so many things that are off kilter here. I don't know where to begin and where to end. It's very hard to stick to the theme of borders, language, and culture in America when we're being distracted with things like this in Gaza.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? One thing that I'm actually glad we're talking about again, and DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, raised this at AmFest, the threats of Islam to the United States, saying what we've all been saying, you've been saying, and I've been saying, that it is a political ideology. Roll this.
But there is a threat to our freedom that is not often talked about enough. And it is the greatest near and long-term threat to both our freedom and our security, and that is the threat of Islamist ideology. At its core, it is a political ideology that seeks to create a global caliphate that governs us here in America, threatening Western civilization, governance by Sharia law.
Yeah, because, like, the white Christian mother of four is not strapping a bomb to her chest.
Look, I'm a real fan of Tulsi. I had her on my podcast months ago, and when she was before she was appointed by Trump, I said this woman is presidential material. People didn't like what I had said. I really admire her background. I think she's wonderful. I think she should have been the vice presidential candidate, and I said so then. However, I don't want to jump to the conclusion that all Muslims are terrorists. I think that would be a disastrous mistake.
Sure.
It's true that most terrorists against the West are Muslim, but we must not fall into the trap of condemning 1 billion people. It is a sect of Islam that is often the most terroristic, as you probably know from your years as a SEAL. The Wahhabi sect, circa 1744, is puritanical, it's resistant to reform, but it happens to be the dominant religious sect of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. People should understand that it's not all of Islam, it's a certain sect. So then they say to me, well, why don't the others stand up? Well, the same thing goes to when the Black Hand ran the Lower East Side of New York. How many Italians didn't support the mafia but wouldn't say a word for fear of being whacked? It's the same thing there. You can't say to the average Muslim wants to be left alone, raise children, make a living. They're not terrorists, but you don't expect them to become warriors against the radicals. It's not realistic. And I think people need to stop saying, why don't they stand up to them, as though that's an excuse to for hating all Muslims. And I'm not apologizing here for radical Islam. I am agreeing with Tulsi. When she said Islamist, that was the most important part of it. You heard it and I heard it. I think most people heard Islam, not Islamist.
Yeah, and I mean, the sector you're talking about is like 300 million people, like almost the population of the United States. So got to leave it right there. Michael Savage, pleasure as always, sir. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thanks for having me on this wonderful week.
Love it. All right, be sure to check out Savage Nation right here on Newsmax Sundays, 8 p.m. Coming up, a big win for free speech in one of the nation's most left-wing campuses. The professor who basically just stuck it to the university. Next.
My husband is Miguel Cervantes, who was a firefighter with the Rancho Cucamonga Fire District. That's what he absolutely loved. My husband's cancer is directly related to his service as a firefighter. My immediate thought after he was gone was, how am I going to do this? Tunnel to Towers said that it would be their honor to help me out by covering my mortgage. To say that it's been a weight lifted off my shoulder would be an understatement.
Need a last-minute gift idea? Get the WeatherTech gift card. Or laser-measured floor liners, cargo liner, side window deflectors, or no-drill mud flaps. Get your gift card instantly at WT.com.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist-recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops. No needles.
That's right. The two big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
These days, supporting the right causes matters more than ever. That's why I chose Patriot Mobile. They're not just a great mobile service provider, they're all about giving back. Every bill helps support causes we believe in: family, faith, and freedom. You get great nationwide coverage on all three main networks. Even better, you're doing it with an American company that stands up for us. It's time to make the switch, y'all. Let's support a wireless company that's got our back. Go to patriotmobile.com and make the switch today.
Where's my mother gonna... Oh, no. Is this the episode with the breakup?
Reba, we can't agree on the house.
Y'all need Realtor.com. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you could find the one today.
This could be it.
Better put a key ring on it. Realtor.com.
All right, this is some breaking news in the past hour. The Department of Education announcing it will conduct a review into Brown University following the murder that rocked the campus last week. Now, the department will investigate if Brown violated a requirement that higher education institutions meet or have to meet certain campus security protocols and security-related requirements as a condition to receiving federal student aid. Good luck, guys. Hope you bring that place down. Big win. Also for free speech on college campuses, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling Friday that a University of Washington violated the free speech rights of a professor who parodied the school's land acknowledgement in his class syllabus. Okay, back in 2021, the university suggested that professors add the line in the school syllabus that said acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land. Computer science professor, who's a professor in like real things, Stuart Reges, instead added, quote, I acknowledge that the labor theory of property in the Coast of Salish people can claim historical ownership of almost none of the land currently occupied by the University of Washington. Now, in a response, the school opened a, quote, harassment investigation into Reges and created a competing course. Now, Circuit Judge Daniel Bress, writing for the majority, writing, debate and disagreement are hallmarks of higher education. Student discomfort with a professor's view can prompt discussion and disapproval, but this discomfort is not grounds for the university retaliating against the professor. University of Washington professor Stuart Reges, the man behind this case. Sir, I'm glad you get to say stuff and trash, or at least have a little bit of fun. Let's say that.
Yeah, you know, they have no sense of humor. You know, they really, they can't see something as a fun parody. Their initial response was that they were horrified. They were horrified that I had done this. And they apologized to my students. They censored my syllabus. They told the students ways they could report me if I said anything else offensive. As you said, they made this alternate section. And then they started an investigation that lasted over a year where they were trying to figure out whether they were going to fire me.
So what was the resolve of the lawsuit? Are you being compensated? Is it confidential? Like, what do you get out of this to give essentially the finger to the people who tried to screw you?
Well, two of the things that were most important to me were that we changed university policy because there was a particular policy that was very vague. They've actually since rescinded that policy. So we had kind of a quiet victory over the summer for that. And we wanted an acknowledgement that the university had done something illegal in retaliating against me. I mean, there is part of it where we're asking for compensation, but that to me has always been the least important part. So it's supposed to go back to the district court, but it looks like the university might appeal this. So it's not over quite yet.
If I were you, I would have been much more petty. I would have said, I want you to buy me some of the land that you claim was stolen and then give it to me. But that, I'm a creative, petty person. Your school, though, the University of Washington, was actually ranked by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression as the 254th out of 257 college in free speech rankings. I mean, at the bottom.
Yeah, fourth from the bottom. Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, we had a speaker last year that was going to talk on the trans issue, and a couple hundred protesters basically prevented her from speaking.
Yeah.
They pounded the door, while she was trying to speak. They pulled the fire alarm. They broke a window and threw a noisemaker into the room.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy, the stuff they did.
No, it's crazy. And look, you're not an overt conservative by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think we agree actually on a lot of things, but here you are. I still want you to be able to say something, tongue in cheek in a syllabus to say, guys, let's have a conversation.
Right. But this is what's been happening on college campuses for the last 10 years is if you violate the orthodoxy, if you say something that's out of the set of principles that they want you to follow, well, you're sexist and racist and homophobic and transphobic, et cetera, and need to be fired. That's kind of the attitude.
Yeah. But here, colleges used to be the bastion where you could debate differing ideas, and apparently your university doesn't want you to do that. So.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I love our free speech group on campus, but there's less interest in the free speech group than in the Communist Party group on campus, and we haven't had a Republican group in years. Fortunately, we have a Turning Point group.
That's amazing to hear that in a bad way. But anyway, Stuart Reges, I'm really glad you won this lawsuit, and I hope they actually take it under advisement.
Thanks.
All right. Before we go, President Trump makes a new appointment to gain security in the Arctic. Next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. That decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
$600 a year. If you're 50 plus, you could save up to that much by switching 2 unlimited lines from Big Wireless to Consumer Cellular. So why don't you pick up your phone while I take this hammer and right now get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
We're talking to people today about investments. Let's see if we can get somebody. Excuse me, sir. Do you have a retirement account?
I do. I'm invested in some annuities.
Fixed income? How is that?
It was better a few years ago. Each year, it buys less and less, barely keeping up.
That's where gold can make a difference. Unlike fixed payouts, gold rises with inflation, so you're not stuck with a low fixed payment.
So gold isn't stuck in the past like my annuity?
Don't let inflation erode your retirement savings. Invest in gold. Invest with Noble Gold Investments.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about YRefi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in YRefi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in YRefi, your interest is calculated daily, you're paid monthly, and should you need your money back early, there is a liquidity feature. Would you like more information? All you have to do is call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com for complete details. And make sure you review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosure at your leisure. YRefi, investing in America's future.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMichael Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 4 consecutive years. Last year, over 1,800 new Corvettes were purchased from McMichael Chevrolet, setting a record for the highest number of new Corvettes ever sold in a calendar year by one single dealership. Experience why Corvette enthusiasts from all over the USA continue to choose McMichael Chevrolet, with hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
What kind of gift can $29 get you these days? It could send someone to their ancestral village and give them a taste of their heritage, from mom's side and dad's side. That's a big gift for a small price.
All right, this is actually something you don't see every day. It looked more like a scene out of Indiana Jones. This is unbelievable. At a town holiday display, we had some serious winds in Connecticut over the weekend. It was like 50-mile-an-hour gusts. This massive Christmas ornament just like rolling down the street in Stamford, Connecticut, like 5 miles. I actually drove down that road on Saturday. Okay, wind blew this ornament off the tip of some Triangle Park and made its way down Harbor Point Road. Giant, I mean, look at the size of this thing. It was like rolling over cars. I mean, this thing's like 12 feet in diameter. And people were like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Okay, people were running out of the front of this thing. It was just unbelievable. Rob, this is like something out of like, you know, a very merry Indiana Jones.
That big thing right there is...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the wind was crazy, right?
No, it was like 50 miles. I went shooting on Sunday, and the clay pigeons were like flying around. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, it was crazy.
Was it blowing the bullets around?
Not the bullets, but the little clay pigeon.
That's
that was the worst I've shot. It was like golfing in like a hurricane.
All right, good stuff, Carl. Good to see you.
Word, man.
Merry Christmas. All right.